Hello, and welcome to my YouTube channel, Reading Little Blue Books out loud while stoned. In this video, we're going to do part 4 and the final part of Little Blue Book number 858, titled The Psychology of Leadership. There it is. What makes it possible for individuals to control and move the masses? Written by Leo Markun. Copyright somewhere in the 1920s, so this is probably 100 years old. And let's see, where were we? Top of page 54. So, there we go. The crowd psychologist makes much of the physical conditions of men and women in assemblage. The scattered public, however, is led almost as well by the politician as the crowd. Suggestion through the newspapers and the popular periodicals works about as well as that of the orator and the preacher. Though less spectacular, it is better controlled. Especially is this true when the suggestion is for the benefit of a complex organization. On the whole, a system of nomination through primary elections is controlled by the political leaders at least as well as one through conventions. When William Jennings Bryan made his Cross of Gold speech, he was but 36 years old, and few persons out of his own state had ever heard of him. He turned the enthusiasm for free silver to his own account and was nominated for president. The leaders had not agreed on any candidate, to be sure, or his eloquence might have been in vain. Great orators, remarks Ross, have confessed that their best thinking was done in the presence of the multitude, real or imagined. But many famous and influential orators have had very little genuine capacity for thinking. The crowd listens to the man who shouts most loudly, who stands out most brightly in the midst of the throng. He is generally a person who seems to possess a great deal of individuality, and yet he reflects the prejudices and the aspirations of the masses. In general, the crowd is better for destroying than for building. Artistry is usually a matter of individuals working out their own problems. The claim that ballads or any other form of artistic work can claim the patronage of a whole community is not to be taken seriously. Where a great many people join in a chorus or orchestra or pageant, the director plays upon them as upon a complex instrument. Tradition, indeed, may limit the director's scope, and some of his players may assist in the direction. But finally, the individuality of the leader must be projected. The building as a work of art depends upon the architect, not upon the hod carriers and carpenters. The battle is won by the able commander, even though he may be sitting comfortably out of the way when his troops advance. It is true that incompetent subordinates may mar the planner's work, but so may bad materials keep the painter who works alone from achieving a masterpiece. Popular sovereignty is a misnomer. In the so-called democracy, with its government of the people, by the people, and for the people, it is the best wire pullers who manage affairs. A vigorous minority, such as that manipulated by the Anti-Saloon League, with the aid of the Baptist and Methodist ministers, is far stronger than any disorganized majority. Various organizations have meddled in politics, chiefly with the aid of the cash chest. Astute legislators have even introduced bills for the sake of being bribed to withdraw them or not to urge them too hard. Aside from monetary considerations, the fear of losing a large block of voters often influences public officials to act in accordance with the will of societies, fraternities, and religious or ethnic groups. The first great leaders of the United States were generally of the opinion that the legislators should decide issues on the basis of their own knowledge and wisdom. It was intended that the president should be chosen by electors. We have made the electors into mere dummies, however, and the representatives in Congress and the state legislatures are tending to vote as public opinion seems to bid them, rather than according to their own opinions. What good will it do me to speak for this bill is more frequently asked by the legislator of himself than what public good will this bill accomplish. According to the old theory, all members of Parliament or Congress represented the whole nation. This has never been substantially true. At the present time, it is obvious that legislators speak for a section, a class, a special interest. Few men are capable of appreciating the common interest of the whole country. And most of these few, are not politicians. When numbers alone count, declares Everett Dean Martin, it is the mediocre man who must be cajoled. His mental qualities set the standard and must be glorified with big words. The chief business, then, of our symbolic heroes in politics is talk. They speechify to the folks back home, knowing full well that they are not convincing their opponents. At the meeting of a board of directors of a great commercial institution, the members seldom split up into two parties. Each man has interest of his own, but usually he feels that the prosperity of the business depends upon united action. Moreover, most of the speeches are to the point. There is no gallery to be considered. There is no reason to create artificial issues. The less showy qualities of leadership become evident, and in most cases the genuinely able men are put at the head of the affairs. It may readily be conceded that the problem of ruling 100 million persons is in many respects more complex and difficult than that of managing a corporation. Even the purpose of government has never been defined to the satisfaction of all concerned. Meanwhile, the petty political leaders are managing things to suit themselves or the big bosses who control their movements. Well, ain't much changed. That's the end of that chapter. We begin a new chapter now called Leadership in Industry. Under scientific management, says Gilbreth, the individual is the unit to be measured. Gilbreth. Let's just assume as everybody should know who that is, apparently. Fundamentalization is based upon utilizing the particular powers and special abilities of each man. Specific individuals are taught these things that they individually require. Incentives are individual, both in the cases of rewards and punishments. And finally, it is the welfare of the individual worker that is considered without the sacrifices of any for the good of the whole. The older tendency was to think in terms of the gang, and there are still kinds of work which can be done about equally well by any persons who are close to normality in mind and body. Fundamentalism implies, first of all, an analysis of the work which must be done in terms of the special tasks, as planning, supervising, inspecting, and so on. It means also that each worker is assigned to the task for which he is especially fitted. A poor shipping clerk may be equipped to do well in the bookkeeping department. The present tendency is to specialize tasks. The manager may be a better rapper than any of the men in his employ. Nevertheless, it is likely that he can use his time to better advantage in directing the work rather than doing it himself. It is clear, Professor Siegelman says, that specialization of the workman saves time both in preparation for the trade and in execution of the task, while the greater familiarity with a single process vastly augments his dexterity. It is, however, in cases where ample technical auxiliaries are used that we find the most minute subdivision of labor. Human energy can then be reduced to the repetition of a single act, like a thrust, a pull, a stroke, or some other simple manipulation of a machine. With such division, the need of supervision, of coordination, becomes extremely great. The old taskmaster's work, that of reducing the tendency to laziness, has not become less. Where a great many working men come together, there are special incentives to soldiering. Men always show a tendency to turn from the work upon which they are engaged when their attention wanders to distracting stimuli. But human beings find nothing quite as so interesting as other individuals of their own kind. Sabotage, depending upon anarchistic and syndicalistic teachings, has been important at times. But scamped work arising simply out of lack of interest has caused many times more economic waste. To counteract this, there have always been punishments and frequently rewards for those workmen who are respectively less or more careful and efficient than their fellows. Punishments alone have proved themselves comparatively ineffective. Except for the simplest sort of work, slave labor is very wasteful. The slave does just well enough to escape the lash. In the case of free workingmen, there is the tendency to substitute the fear of dismissal for the whip. To lose a position may involve hunger, not merely for the workman, but for his wife and dependent children. But unemployment is not always a punishment for an individual's inefficiency. It may come out of a conflict of temperaments between the workingman and the foreman, who is his direct superior. It may result from a general slackness of industry or from the mismanagement of a particular mill or mine or factory or shop where the workman has been employed. When a man discharges the best worker in his gang because of his own jealousy or ill temper or both, remarked Blackford and Newcomb, the loss to their common employer may run into thousands of dollars. If in the man so discharged there is an embryo general manager or advertising manager with ideas, the loss may run into the millions. Even when the man thrown out is an ordinary workman, the loss is considerable. Aside from considerations of justice, then, the power to dismiss must be held as a last resort, and rewards must be given as well as punishments. Sometimes a change in the title works wonders. Men consider a promotion from instructor to assistant professor, or from advertising manager to managing director, the equivalent of tens of dollars a week. A ribbon, a cross, a medal, an engrossed testimonial may cost very little and mean still less. Yet they frequently attach the recipient to the giver. It was one of the greatest leaders of men who have ever lived, Napoleon, that founded the Legion of Honor. The bit of ribbon is but a bauble, if you will, but men have given their blood for such toys as these. The elementary class is incited to do its best by the promise of stars, and serious-minded college students burn Mazda lamps at midnight to be summa cum laude, or members of Phi Beta Kappa, for guerdon of their toil. We'll stop right there for a moment, because I'm getting a little cotton mouthy. This hydration break was brought to you by my friend Maddie. Hydrate, Maddie. The star and the medal and the gold key and the bright bit of ribbon are visible tokens of praise. The leader of industry is lavish of condemnation to his employees, but not so lavish that they will be encouraged to ask for a raise in wages. Individuals vary, of course. Some become as clay in the hands of the clever flatterer. Others are more suspicious. But I suspect that most persons who remain unmoved by flattery have simply not been approached in the proper manner. They may desire, instead of good words for their skill at their work, commendations of their expertness at golf, their good looks, or their excellent taste in socks and neckties. That's what I want to be known for, my excellent taste in socks and neckties. Considering the education and special training for their tasks possessed by men who wear white shirts and collars while they are working, they tend to earn less than those who must put on overalls. Pride goes with the speckless clothing. The minor employees of banks are very poorly paid as a class, but they have the satisfaction of being trusted with large sums of money. An assistant paying teller in the smallest cities, even an assistant cashier, earns considerably less than a union plasterer, but he is supposed to be far above the working man socially. It is important for the leader to treat each man individually, to show him that his name is worth remembering, that he is an important cog in the machine, and also something more. Many working men prefer employment in small plants, where their earning capacity is somewhat less than it would be in a larger one, but where they are known as Jim or Newt instead of Operative 85 or Hey there, you. In many fairly large American establishments, even the lowliest of the employees addresses the head of the business by his first or a pet name. A certain amount of familiarity may breed confidence rather than contempt. In a great Boston department store, the employees are allowed to decide many important questions of general policy. On at least one occasion, they were asked to say whether or not the store should be closed on a holiday in June. After being shown that the company would lose a great deal by giving up a day's business during that month of special sales, they voted that the store should remain open. The matter was managed so that there could be little doubt about the final decision, and yet the esprit de corps among the employees was heightened by the confidence reposed upon them. Obviously, such idealism in management is indeed to bring increased profits to the employer. This is the purpose of all schemes involving bonus distribution and profit sharing, except in a few cooperative enterprises. These latter have seldom been successful, at least in the United States, except when they have been of limited scope. It hardly falls within the scope of the present essay to discuss the possibility of disinterested leadership, the ability to find managers not concerned with their own profits. The socialistic teachings insist that there are men who could lead without exploiting others, that there would be more such under a proper system of education. The defendants of the capitalistic form of industrial organization contend, of course, that exploitation does not exist. There is a tendency for working men to become capitalists in a small way, whether by opening up businesses of their own or by investing in the stock of large corporations. Certain of the labor banks are established on very strong foundations. There are even now certain trades in which the walking delegate of the union has almost as much influence as the individual proprietor. With the increased unionization due to the immigration restrictions, it appears likely that the influence of the labor leaders will grow. This does not mean that the power of the average working man will become much greater. The men at the head of the union have interests of their own to serve, and these do not always coincide exactly with those of the persons they are supposed to represent. So true. True democracy is impossible in any body of men and women. It is obvious that the ability to lead varies greatly from one man to another. Very likely, some of the differences in this respect are innate. Others depend upon education. Yet I do not know that any efficient system of training in the management of men has ever been devised. At West Point and Annapolis, the cadets are taught that it is necessary to learn how to obey before one is capable of commanding. But the graduates are not particularly excellent in leadership, even though highly artificial conditions are created for them. The enlisted man is in certain respects a slave. He is not permitted to leave his position until the term of his enlistment is over, even though his superior officers may be tyrannical and overbearing. Very few slave drivers are capable of refraining from acts of cruelty, and numerous military and naval officers are subject to this failing, especially the young lieutenants. freshly escaped from the strict discipline of the academies, are likely to abuse their authority. Colonel Munson speaks of the officers of unsound mentally, which manifests itself in arrogant, tyrannical, harsh, capricious, nagging, or suspicious conduct. Such leaders are found in civilian life as well, but their such behavior tends to defeat its own ends. The superintendent who acts capriciously and cruelly is likely to destroy his employers or his own business by driving away the best working men and having to accept those inferior individuals who are willing to accept abuse. Even in driving slaves, kindness has its uses. In dealing with free men, it is necessary to consider their desires, to shape them gently, to make their will that which the leader wants it to be. Not force, then, but tact is the leading quality necessary for the modern manager of men. The first prerequisite for leadership is understanding. The leader must be familiar with his industry, or his political system, or his institution. Above all, though, he must know human nature. And that's the end of Little Blue Book, number 858, titled The Psychology of Leadership. Boom, there you go. What Makes It Possible for Individuals to Control and Move the Masses, written by Leo Markun, copyright 1920s. Thanks for listening, and join me in the next Little Blue Book.